Yo, 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 yippee, yo, yippee, yay. It's another episode of Cry Baby. And you're back with your boy, it's Rave. How we all doing, guys? And before we get into it, remember to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. Not that bell. That bell. Okay, so straight into it, guys. A lot has been happening over the last couple of weeks. Not only the pandemic, there has also been mass rioting across the globe. That is down to the senseless murdering of George Floyd at the hands of a white police officer, Derek Chauvin. I'm not really going to get into that today. There's too much to be said about it, and there's already a lot that's been said. All I can really say is, for me personally, as a white British male, I've never been in any sort of position which would parallel the scenarios that black people find themselves in a daily basis. I can't even pretend to say that I've ever faced any bias due to my skin colour. The only time that I've felt a little bit of a minority is when I've been abroad. I've done a bit of travelling, and when I've been in Southeast Asia, if you're in a bit of a remote place where they don't tend to have too many tourists, you get stared at. But that's not really relatable. All they're looking at, all they see when they see a white person is just money signs, just dollar signs. So I can't compare that to the life and the struggles of a black person in today's society. You think we're pretty progressive now in 2020. I don't have to worry about going out to a shop and a shopkeeper staring at me or keeping their eye on me, or a security guard following me around a store because the colour of your skin brings certain stereotypes with it. And I don't like to use the term white privilege, but I think that's where it sort of comes into play. When you don't even understand that you have these certain small, even though it's very minute and the minutiae of these advantages, you don't have to worry about these small things. There's a lot to be said for it, and I'm probably not the best one to speak on it. There's many more qualified people to be making a statement on the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and I'll probably leave it to them to say. But what I was going to start with today is Madeleine McCann. I mean, if Madeleine McCann was going to show up, 2020 was going to be a year, right? We look like we might be close to getting some sort of resolution to Madeleine McCann's disappearance, to her kidnapping, to her abduction. And it's potentially looking like it could have been a German expat who was living in the Algarve at the time that Madeleine McCann went missing. Apparently he was driving around, he used to live or drive around in like a little VW camper. I guess the VW camper is the universal vehicle of nonces. Who has a VW camper and who isn't a nonce? Really? Ask yourself that question. And if you're thinking, hey, I've got a VW camper, go check your boot. There's probably a kid tied up in there. So it's this guy, Christian B, has been named as. They have named his full name in the German papers, but I'll keep it at Christian B. He's a 40-odd-year-old German bloke, slim, blonde hair, blue eyes, Aryan-esque type of guy. He's been linked to a lot of other rapes. He's just a horrible guy. He doesn't seem to have like a specific type, a specific profile he goes for either. It seems like it can be any age, all ages. Women, I guess, is one common factor between all of them. So he's been getting attention by the media at the moment, and apparently, so it's been claimed today, the German police do believe that Madeleine's dead. I mean, I could have told you that, really. I mean, isn't that the case within the first 48 hours of most of these cases, that you can just assume that they're dead at that point? There's this golden window of opportunity where you need to establish the location of these missing people, otherwise they've just gone, they're fucked, they're dead. Because it's too risky for a suspect to keep them around for such a length of time, because there's more risk of him getting caught. If you're trying to keep a small child quiet, you're probably going to get caught at some point. So very highly likely, as it was probably assumed from the get-go that she was dead after the first week or so, that she's dead and buried. And now they're just waiting on this guy to, I believe, just admit to the murder. Just to look at the guy. This is, I guess, going back to the whole stereotyping people for looking a certain way. But this guy looks like a nonce, right? He looks like he's going to steal your child and you'll never see them again. And another Irish lady has come out. She was working as a holiday rep at the Praia de Luz complex at the holiday resort that Madeleine was taken from. She was working there back in 2004, so 3 years before Madeleine went missing, before she disappeared, and she was raped, and she's pretty certain that it was by this Christian B bloke. Everything that she recalls seems to match up with him, with his build, his frame, his look. She didn't want to keep her anonymity. She was happy for her image to be used, and she essentially described this horrific ordeal that she went through at the hands of potentially this Christian B bloke. It's not been confirmed yet, but she said she woke up in the middle of the night, someone calling her name. She woke up and then there was this bloke at the end of her bed, stood there with a machete in hand. He was wearing some sort of stockings over his face, as to, obviously, to sort of hide his image, hide his face. But she distinctly remember, even in the dark, she distinctly remember seeing sort of the blonde eyebrows and even the piercing blue eyes of this Christian B. He removed her from her bed, took her downstairs, took her outside into another room, tied her up on a breakfast table, on like a tabletop on one of the breakfast bars, removed her clothing by cutting it, and then it put her through a 5-hour ordeal of raping, essentially. The common factor, the common denominator in the whole Madeleine McCann case seems to be the poor, shoddy work of the police around the Algarve at the time in Portugal. She made the police aware of what had happened. The police took her into custody, and she said one of the most humiliating parts of the whole ordeal was when she was with the police, and the police made her strip off, spread her legs whilst they took photos of her. A few days after, when she went back to her apartment, her mother found her a broken fingernail, a broken nail on her bed, which she assumed to be hers, but it just goes to show the lack of evidence finding, like the lack of work that they did in terms of finding any evidence within the room, within the place where it actually took place. And they just essentially told her to keep quiet because it'll bring a bad name to the holiday complex and to the Algarve, and they want tourists to go there and spend money. And again, this could have prevented Madeleine, if they'd have managed to have found the bloke there, and then if the police had actually pulled the finger out and done some work, they could have found the guy, they could have arrested this Christian B a lot sooner and prevented Madeleine's disappearance, and prevented a lot of grief and anguish for her parents. I mean, Jerry and Kate, the amount of trolling they must have faced over the years, the amount of abuse that they must have faced, because there was, there's been some good evidence to point the finger towards them. But if it is the case that it was this Christian B bloke all along, and he was the one responsible for taking Madeleine, and it was just down to the shoddy work of the police, then they've been put through fucking hell for the last 13 years. Not only was their child snatched, but they've also been in the forefront of everyone's mind as the guilty party. They were the ones who murdered Madeleine after, supposedly giving her a lethal dose of a sleeping drug or whatever. There's so many conspiracies around it. But what do you think, guys? All the evidence, it seems to be pointing to this Christian B. But let me know what you guys think. Was it Christian B? Was it Jerry and Kate? Who knows? Hopefully, in 2020, we'll end that saga. But tune in again next time, guys, for another episode of The Crybaby.